I know that you might just starting out with After Effects and want to learn the essential tips quickly to get up and running fast. Well, you've come to the right place because I'm about to share the most important things you need to know in After Effects just in 10 minutes. So let's dive in. Here is what After Effects look like. On the left project panel, here we can drag and drop all our assets, images, videos, and anything that we're using. Let's click on this button down here to create a new composition. In this window, you can adjust your size, name, and etc. And also you can change it later. Now you can see the composition is added to our project panel and is open in our composition window. It looks black because there's nothing in there yet So let's drag in some of that footage that appears down here in our timeline for this composition. The timeline works similar to the layer panel that you might use in Photoshop, and we can add more assets like our logo on our composition. And now both our logo and our footage appear down here. This logo is way too big, so let's select this dot in the corners, hold Shift and drag that toward the center to scale it down. If a layer is above another in the timeline, they're visible on top of the actual video, so if we move our logo below our footage, it becomes hidden underneath it. Let's put that back. Unlike Photoshop and other layer-based software, we have duration. In After Effects, we can press a space bar and it play our video. And depending on how much stuff is in our composition, this might not play back in real time. And you can drop the resolution down here if you're struggling and you want some smoother playback. Now let's add some animation to our logo. We want to do some similar animation fading and moving upward. If we click on this arrow over here and then click on the arrow next to transform, we reveal properties of this layer and we're going to change this over time to create our animation. If we want to adjust this position of our logo, we can do that by clicking and dragging these numbers, inputting our own values, or simply clicking and dragging on our composition. As a professional motion designer, I've spent maybe 80 of my career adjusting these transform properties. These are the backbones to almost all animation in After Effects. Now we can move our logo around. But that doesn't move it when we play our animation. We need to tell After Effects where logo needs to be at what time. And we do that by keyframe. At the start of our timeline, let's move our logo toward the bottom of our scene. We're going to set keyframe by clicking this stopwatch next to the value that we want to change all properties that you can change over time. We'll have a stopwatch next to them. Now let's move forward seconds in our timeline and drag our logo upward. And look at that, After Effects has created another keyframe at that point. Keyframes are like markers that tell After Effects at this point in the timeline the position of this layer will be here, and at the start it's going to be here. And After Effects figures out where it needs to be in between those values. When we play it back, we have an animation. It's simple, but it's definitely animated. If you want this movement to be faster, we can click and drag this keyframe forward. If you want it slower, we can drag it further away. Now our logo motion comes to pretty harsh stop where it's reached top. And that doesn't look very natural in a real world. Objects accelerate and decelerate when they start and stop moving. So we can select these keyframes and press F9 on our keyboard, which is the shortcut for easy ease. You can also find that by going up to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and Easy Ease. There's some acceleration and deceleration in movement and feels a little more natural. You'll be using that a lot in After Effects. Here's what Easy Ease keyframes look like compared to that linear one that we start with. Both animations last 2 seconds, but one with easing varies its speed and feels more natural. Now let's fade on our logo by keyframing its opacity at 100%. Moving our playhead to start of our timeline. Let's drag down to 0 and now it will fade on. Let's select those and easing ease with F9. If you want to adjust how much of these properties using, you can select them and click this button here to open up the graph editor. Here we can see an easing curve and you can mess around with those to create more or less easing to your animation. It's really powerful technique, but maybe not for your first day. Let's click this again to go back to our timeline view, and our timeline gets a bit crowded. We've got all this info that we don't need about our scale and rotation. What we can do is press U on your keyboard. That will hide every property that isn't keyframed. And you can hide it again by pressing U and keep pressing U to cycle them on and off. You can also transform properties with keyboard shortcut too. When the layer selected, clicking S brings up the scale property. R brings up its rotation. P is position and T is opacity. Our animation is looking wonderfully competent, but like all good motion graphics, we need some text to tell whoever's watching our video either what to think or what to buy. So let's select the text tool from up here in our toolbar. We've also got some other tools to draw shapes. We can draw ellipses, rectangles, and we even have a hand tool so we can move our composition around if we need to. And with our text all selected, we can simply click and start typing. I'm going to select the arrow tool and then move that toward the middle, and we can see that create a new text layer down in our timeline as well. Now we don't want this text to fade in gently. Like our logo, we want this to have an impact, so we can select the front our layer and drag that so it starts a bit after this animation. And to make sure it's actually 100 in the middle, we can click on our Align panel, make sure it says Align to Composition and click Align horizontally. Now it's dead center. We also have effects and presets over here on the right. This is where we can apply effects to our layers, and here are a lot of look through here, so this search bar comes in very handy. Let's select our footage layer in our timeline and then search for hue and saturation, and we can add that effect to our layer by double clicking. Here we can make changes to our effects. We can drag the hue to change the color values of our layer. What we want to do in this situation is drag down the saturation to make it black and white. Let's also decrease the lightness as well to make this white text just a bit more readable. Now we might need to use this logo and text animation on top of different footage. To do that really easily, we can pre-compose it. So let's select both our logo and text layer, go up to layer and select pre-compose. Now you'll see in our timeline that those two layers have become one composition. And you'll see that composition is now added into our project panel as well logo and type. Let's go over and create Come quickly in our project window. And let's drag in some other footage that we have and drag in our logo and type on top of that. And we can see really quickly and we've got the same animation over some different footage. And we can go into logo and type Come and make some changes to that text. And now if we go back and view either of those comps with the same footage, you can see that our text is changed in both of them. That's the great way to repeat animation across multiple composition and videos, and we could also make adjustment to this pre-comp's transform properties. Now we are happy with our amazing animation. Let's render it. So with the composition open, we can click up in composition and add to render queue. And now our timeline is changed to our render queue. We can leave render setting to best settings because I'm in their best setting output module. We do want to change though. Change the format to QuickTime and change the format option to Apple ProRes 42HQ and click OK. That will give us a high quality render, but the file size won't be too unbelievably large like lossless uncompressed video file would be. And let's click on output and choose where we want to save it. Let's click here and then we hit render. This might take a moment, and when this bar fills up, we're done. That render file is very high quality. If you want a smaller file size and don't mind a bit more compression, you can also add composition to Adobe Media Encoder directly to After Effects by going back to composition, add to Media Encoder queue if you don't need to deliver an extremely high quality render. And the default H.264 setting will be a great setting for almost any use on the web. And then we can click and play button to start and encoding that. After Effects can be a really intimidating piece of software to start for the first time. I hope I've made that a bit less intimidating for you. There's so much more to explore, but these are essential and should serve you well on your first day. Good luck.